7 minutes remaining before in government orders. The honourable member for Victoria.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to speak to an extremely important motion brought forward by my superb colleague, the Member of Parliament for Halifax, and our NDP opposition critic on environment. The motion in this House asks that three things be done. First of all, that this House agree with many Canadians and with the International Energy Agency that there is a grave concern with the impacts of a 2-degree rise in global average temperatures. Secondly, that this House condemn the lack of effective action by successive federal governments since 1998 to address emissions and meet our Kyoto commitments. And thirdly, to call on the government to immediately table its climate change adaptation plan. Mr. Speaker, it's almost trite to observe that climate change is the single most important environmental issue of our time. Canadians know that. People in Victoria know that. Personally, I've dedicated my professional life to environmental protection because I understand if we don't ensure an ecologically sustainable future for the next generation, we're condemning them to no future at all. Unfortunately, members of this House, of the Conservative government, are locked in a dangerous pattern of climate change denial. They've embarrassed Canadians on the world stage, doing incredible damage to our international reputation, pulling Canada out of major treaties like the Kyoto Protocol and, most recently and shamefully, the UN Convention on to combat desertification. I'm immensely proud to be part of a new democratic opposition that has fought and will continue to keep fighting for urgent, international, science-based action on greenhouse gases to avert catastrophic climate change and to advocate for national plans to mitigate and adapt to climate impacts. I'm also proud to be part of an official opposition because the NDP has a real chance to come to power and actually take real action on these crucial issues. Canadians from coast to coast to coast understand, Mr. Speaker, the urgency of this issue. It's just this Conservative government that's out of step. They're out of step with Canadians and with our closest allies internationally. They refuse to take meaningful action. But the climate change crisis is now. There's no time for Conservative stalling. Canadians understand the need to wake up. So I'm calling on all members of this House that seem stuck in some kind of uninformed stupor about climate change denial, that they must wake up and support this motion. Climate change is real. Denying it is not going to make it go away. The time to act is now. The science is undeniable. The effects of climate change are already being felt all over the world. The 10 warmest years on record have occurred since 1998. Between 2001 and 2010, global temperatures averaged a half a degree almost of centigrade above the average from 1961 to 1990, and were the highest ever recorded for a 10-year period since the beginning of instrumental climate records. Here in Canada, temperatures have increased by 1.3 degrees Celsius since 1948. We know that ocean acidification is picking up pace, threatening entire marine ecosystems such as those in my part of the world in the Pacific Ocean. Disastrous weather events are increasing in frequency around the globe. The obvious economic impacts are devastating. The National Roundtable on the Environment and the Economy suggested that the economic impact on Canada alone could reach $5 billion a year by 2020 and between $21 billion and $43 billion a year by 2050. Sadly, Mr. Speaker, this government simply abolished the Roundtable. It took climate change seriously, the Roundtable did. It tried to find real solutions. It wasn't part of the Conservative agenda. I guess it had to go. PricewaterhouseCoopers, in a 2012 report entitled "Too Late for 2 Degrees," states that business leaders have been asking for clarity and political action on climate change and warned that one thing is clear. Businesses, governments and communities across the world have to start planning for a warming world, not just by 2 degrees, but 4 degrees, even 6 degrees centigrade. Yet, in an interview in La Presse with the editorial board, the Minister of Natural Resources actually said, and I quote, People aren't as worried as they were before about global warming of 2 degrees. Scientists have recently told us that our fears on climate change are exaggerated, close quote. He also said he was unaware of a recent International Energy Agency warning that 2/3 of the existing known fossil fuel reserves must remain in the ground to prevent average global warming of more than 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. Mr. Speaker, this is coming from our Minister of Natural Resources. It's simply unacceptable. But unfortunately, it's what we've come to expect from this Conservative government. It's intent on ignorance in the face of a problem while governments around the world are preparing for the reality of climate change. Following the devastation of Hurricane Sandy, after New York City experienced its worst storm surges in recorded history, the Governor of New York State, Mayor Bloomberg of New York City, said they need to prepare for and respond to the reality of climate change-related disasters. By contrast, Mr. Speaker, well, our Minister of Natural Resources would say, don't worry, be happy. But that's just not acceptable. Canadians get that this is a crisis. Every day I get asked why the Conservatives castigate our job-killing $20 billion tax on climate or whatever. Shallow and false rhetoric won't help us have the adult conversations we need to address this crisis. Climate change experts said Hurricane Sandy provided a first glimpse of the kind of challenges all coastal communities are going to face as sea levels rise and extreme weather events become more frequent. Here in Canada, a 1-meter sea level rise would inundate more than 15,000 hectares of industrial and residential land, more than 4,600 hectares of farmland, and Vancouver International Airport could be affected. The bill to repair the damage caused by Hurricane Sandy is estimated to be over $42 billion. Hurricane Katrina, over $100 billion. Speaker, contrary to what the Minister of Natural Resources would have you believe, the 2-degree threshold is a dangerous tipping point for irreversible damage to our planet's ecosystem.